"She's just a secretary," my mother whispered, laughing softly as she introduced me to the wedding guests. They nodded politely, not knowing I had just closed a $100 million deal hours earlier. At the dinner table, I sat between the coat rack and a crying toddler. Invisible. But they didn't know what was coming. They didn't know a photograph of me was being printed on the front page of the Business Weekly as I smiled beside the President of Mexico. They didn't know the speech later that night would rewrite everything. And neither did I until the microphone was suddenly passed to me. The chandelier above the ballroom sparkled like a galaxy of perfect illusions. My mother stood in the centre, glowing with pride as she held court among the guests. "My son," she said, her voice rich with performative affection, "just got promoted to director. We're so proud." The crowd clapped. Then her eyes glanced in my direction just for a second. "And that's Jane. She's just a secretary." A polite chuckle spread across the room. I smiled, thin, hollow, practiced. I stood near the punch bowl, hands clasped in front of my dress. Ivory satin, tailored, subtle. Expensive, but not loud. I knew better than to outshine the bride, or more accurately, the bride's family, which included my mother. She approached me with that rehearsed, tight smile, the one that looked good in photos but never reached her eyes. "Try not to draw attention, okay?" she said through her teeth. "We want this day to be about your brother." "Of course we do." As she drifted away, my phone buzzed. I glanced down. "CEO," it read. I stepped quietly outside to answer. "Jane," the voice said, crisp and direct. "Mexico's president confirmed for tomorrow. You'll lead the briefing. Bring the acquisition portfolio." "Yes," I replied, voice low. "I'll be ready." I hung up and stared at the moonlit lawn. Guests laughed and clinked glasses behind me. I could almost hear my mother, somewhere inside, saying, "She takes messages and fetches coffee. Sweet girl." I re-entered the room just in time to catch a new round of applause for my brother. He stood beside his fiancée, smug in his tailored suit, basking in attention like a cat in the sun. He looked over at me and offered a nod, more habit than warmth. I raised my glass in return, like an afterthought. Later that night, we gathered at home for the rehearsal dinner. The table was long, ornate, filled with crystal and silverware I wasn't allowed to touch as a child. I was seated near the end, next to Aunt Marlene, who'd had 3 glasses of Chardonnay and a loud toddler pounding on the table. My mother sat at the head, perfectly framed like a Renaissance matriarch. She glanced at my dress and sighed. "I said neutral tones, Jane. That's a bit much, don't you think?" "It's cream," I said gently. "It's loud cream," she corrected. I bit my tongue. It was always like this. Correct, diminish, reframe. She turned to my brother and began rehearsing the order of speeches for tomorrow. "You'll go first, then your father. Jane," she added with a thin smile, "just sit pretty and try not to interrupt." "Got it," I said, hiding the tremble in my voice behind the rim of my wine glass. After dinner, I slipped away to my room. The hallway was quiet, lined with family portraits. Every frame seemed to feature my brother, front and centre. In the one where I was valedictorian, they'd cropped it to fit him beside me, holding his football trophy. I smiled at the memory, not out of fondness, but familiarity. Some rituals never change. Inside my room, I opened my briefcase and pulled out a folder thick with freshly signed contracts, names like Glaxo, Merck, Petromex, global giants. I had closed every deal in that folder. I, the secretary. On my nightstand, my phone buzzed again. This time, a message from our company's media team. Your photo is set for the front page. Business Weekly confirmed. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then at the folder. Then at the reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back at me didn't look invisible. She didn't look small. She didn't look like someone who needed a microphone or a wedding toast to be recognised. Still, I said nothing. Not because I was weak, not anymore, but because I was waiting. And tomorrow, when that front page hit the stands, when my name and face appeared next to a world leader, I wouldn't need to say a single word. The world would speak for me. I remember standing on the school stage at 10 years old, holding a certificate for being the top student in the district. My heart thumped with pride as the principal shook my hand. I scanned the crowd, searching for my mother's face. She clapped, yes, but with the same expression she used when watching local news. On the ride home, I waited for her to say something, anything. She glanced over, finally, and said, "Just don't let your brother feel bad about it, all right? You're both smart in your own ways." I learned quickly. Success only counted if it didn't make him uncomfortable. If I accomplished anything, it had to be quiet, modest, forgettable. As I grew older, the rules didn't change. When I landed a full scholarship to Stanford, her response was, "That's great, but California's so far. Will you be okay without us?" When I published my first industry op-ed under my own name, she skimmed it and said, "Are you sure you wrote this? It sounds technical." Every recognition was met with suspicion, every achievement minimized. My brother failed out of business school twice, but was still ambitious. I launched multi-million-dollar partnerships and was still support staff. I stopped trying to explain. I stopped offering anything for approval. But this time was different. I sat in the corner of my apartment, warm light falling over stacks of paper and open folders. My laptop pinged. I clicked. "Dear Jane Taylor, we are honoured to confirm your selection as keynote speaker for TEDx Global, the future of strategic thinking." For a moment I said nothing. I let the words sink in. A tiny smile touched the edge of my mouth. Then, instinctively, I moved the cursor to forward the email to my mother and stopped. I didn't. The wedding was now 3 days away. I'd already RSVP'd. My name wasn't on the seating chart. Instead, a note had been scribbled in my mother's handwriting on the back of the invitation. "Assigned to support table near kitchen, help with logistics." I read it twice. It wasn't a mistake. I wasn't a guest. I was staff. I didn't confront her. I didn't call to ask. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what she was doing. She wanted me small. I smiled. The morning of the wedding, I dressed with precision. Grey slacks, navy blouse, low heels, professional, respectable, invisible. I wore no jewellery except the watch given to me by the CEO on our last deal. It had the company's seal engraved under the face. By noon, I had already signed a contract that would restructure the board of a Fortune 500 tech firm. A firm, incidentally, where my brother had recently applied for a junior management role. He didn't know I had any connection to it. He didn't know the woman who forwarded his resume to the rejection pile was the same one seated near the kitchen at his wedding. Poetic. I arrived at the venue early. My mother greeted me with a clipboard in hand, all business. We'll need someone to manage the flower delivery. They got the wrong shade of white. Of course, I said. I took the clipboard. She didn't ask where I had been that morning. She never asked. As guests began to arrive, I moved through the crowd with ease, invisible as always, until I noticed a man near the bar, well-dressed, sharp-eyed, unfamiliar. He wasn't looking at the couple, he was scanning the room. Then he walked directly to my mother. "I'm looking for Jane Taylor," he said. She blinked. "Why?" He smiled. "I'd like to meet the woman who just saved our international merger. My CEO insists I thank her in person." There was a pause. Her eyes darted to me. I was standing just feet away, hands folded calmly. The stranger followed her gaze. He extended a hand. "Ms. Taylor?" I shook it. "Yes." He grinned. "It's an honour." And just like that, the room shifted. The reception hall shimmered with chandeliers and curated elegance. Laughter rippled across tables dressed in white linen, the sound of polished silverware clinking like a metronome of civility. My mother stood at the podium, bouquet of white roses in one hand, champagne in the other. The microphone crackled gently before her voice rang out, smooth, deliberate, and perfectly rehearsed. "I want to thank everyone for coming today," she began, pausing just long enough for polite applause. "We are gathered here not just to celebrate love, but legacy. My son, our son, has always been the pride of this family. Ambitious, generous, the one to carry our name forward." More applause. She held her glass a little higher, eyes glistening. "And to my daughter Jane, our calm, sweet Jane, always supportive, always reliable, the kind of daughter who knows how to stand beside greatness." She turned toward me, smiling like she just handed me an award. I smiled back, fixed, serene. Across the room, a buzz began to spread. It started with one phone, then another, a low murmur like wind through dry leaves. I caught the flicker in people's eyes, something flashing across their screens. My brother leaned toward his best man, brows furrowed. Then a bridesmaid gasped. I could feel the air shift. Someone whispered, not quietly enough, "Is this her?" And then, just behind the dessert table, a waiter's phone buzzed loudly. He looked down, froze, then turned it toward the event planner. She blinked and whispered, "No way." My mother, still at the mic, glanced around, confused. "Is everything all right?" That's when the event host stepped up, leaned into the mic and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, we have just received a special update. Today's edition of New York Business Weekly has just been released, and the cover story features none other than one of our guests tonight, Jane Taylor." A beat of silence, then gasps, murmurs, stares. He gestured toward the screen behind him. With a click, the projector lit up. My photo appeared, me shaking hands with the President of Mexico, smiling with composure beneath the headline, "The Silent Strategist, Jane Taylor, Reshapes Global Mergers." A spotlight found me before I could move. All eyes turned. My mother's face, still illuminated at the podium, had drained of colour. Her smile faltered, cracked, and collapsed. She stepped away from the mic. In that pause, the host continued, "Oh, and one more surprise. Our CEO, Richard Vaughan, just posted this. Jane Taylor is not only brilliant, she's indispensable, the best decision I've ever made." The same Richard Vaughan my mother once mocked in front of the family, calling him an overrated suit who got lucky. I stood up slowly, offered a polite nod, and made my way toward the exit. I didn't linger. I didn't bow. I didn't need to. Upstairs, the hallway was quiet. I sat on the edge of a velvet bench near the bridal suite, waiting for the chaos to settle below. Minutes later, the door creaked open. My mother stepped inside, face wet, clutching a handkerchief like a lifeline. "Jane," she said, voice breaking, "why didn't you tell me?" I looked at her. Calm, even. "You never asked." She sat beside me, hands trembling. "I didn't mean to. God, I just wanted you safe, stable. I didn't want you to fail." "You didn't want me to shine," I corrected gently. She wept harder. "I didn't know how to raise a daughter like you." I didn't respond. I didn't comfort. I let her cry, not from cruelty, from clarity. Finally I stood. "I have to go," I said softly. "But your brother, he needs your help." That stopped me. I turned. "Why?" "He applied to your company last month. Didn't get a call back. Maybe you could talk to someone." For the first time in years, I let myself laugh, quiet, incredulous. "I'm just a secretary, remember?" She flinched. I walked away, down the stairs, past the music, the lights, the guests still whispering. I didn't look back. It started with a single sentence. She said I was just a secretary, and for too long I believed her. I hit publish. I didn't expect much, maybe a few shares, a few quiet nods from strangers on LinkedIn, but 24 hours later my post had over 10 million views. The title, "Just a Secretary," had become a trending hashtag. Comments flooded in. Women from every corner of the world, lawyers, nurses, stay-at-home mums, executives, girls barely out of college. Each one with a story of being dismissed, underestimated, silenced. By day 2, the article had been translated into 5 languages. On day 3, I received a message from a woman named Mia. "You probably don't remember me," she wrote. "I applied to intern with you 3 years ago. You turned me down. It crushed me, but I kept watching you, learning from you. Today I run a startup, supporting women who've been shut out of their own families. If you're open to it, I'd like to work together." I remembered her, quiet, nervous, too raw for what I needed then, but clearly she'd found her voice. I wrote back immediately. We met at a small cafe tucked between rows of brick offices. Mia was taller now, more confident. She spoke with purpose. "I want to build a network," she said, "a real one. For women who are invisible in their own homes. We need tools, mentorship, legal advice, mental health resources. I can't do it without you." I stared at her, listening, remembering a version of myself I had nearly buried. The girl who once stood in her childhood bedroom holding a scholarship letter, too afraid to smile too wide. "You're not building it alone," I said. "We're building it together." By the end of the week, we had a name, Sisterhood Silent No More. The first seed money came from me, quietly, without ceremony. I didn't need headlines, but some victories deserved precision. 2 months later, I signed a confidential acquisition deal. The target, a mid-sized firm known for its outdated culture, lack of diversity, and underwhelming numbers. Also, coincidentally, the place my brother still worked. I never mentioned it. Why would I? In the boardroom, I smiled as the final contract slid across the table. The legal rep from the firm, oblivious to my connection, asked, "Why this company?" I replied, "Because broken systems need rebuilding." Weeks passed. Then came the knock at my door. My mother stood outside, holding a bouquet of white peonies. "I thought you liked these," she said. "I did," I replied. "When I was 12, she held them out. I didn't take them. "Can we talk?" she asked. I stepped outside, closed the door behind me. "What is it?" She hesitated. "I've been reading things about you, about the foundation, about everything." I said nothing. She swallowed hard. "You've become someone." "I always was someone," I said. A beat passed. She looked down. "I didn't know how to mother you." "I didn't need a perfect mother," I replied. "I needed one who didn't clip my wings." She lifted the bouquet again. "I came to say sorry." "And I came to say no," I replied. "Not to forgiveness, to pretending." She blinked. "What do you mean?" I pointed to the door. "This house, this space. You don't get to come in and rewrite history because it's convenient now." Her face trembled. "You're shutting me out." "No," I said softly. "I'm protecting what I rebuilt." She left the flowers on the step. I let them wilt there. Later that night, I returned to my office. Mia was waiting. "We got another email," she said, holding out her phone. It was from a girl in Ohio, 17, desperate, alone. I read Jane's blog. I was going to end it, but if she made it out, maybe I can too. I felt something twist inside, old pain, familiar. On my desk sat a box I hadn't opened in years. I reached for it, opened the lid. Inside, a sealed envelope with my name in cursive. I had written it to myself at 19, before Stanford, before success, before all of it. It said, "You are not what they say. You are who you decide to become." And in that moment, the tears came, not from grief, but from recognition. The auditorium was packed. Thousands of people, rows upon rows, lit by soft stage lights and the hum of anticipation. Banners lined the walls, each bearing the name of the event, Global Summit on Psychological Resilience. I stood backstage, microphone clipped, palms calm. Not from lack of nerves, but from the quiet certainty of someone who no longer needed validation. The announcer's voice echoed across the space. "Our next speaker is the founder of Sisterhood Silent No More. She's an executive strategist, a writer, and a voice for the unheard. Please welcome Jane Taylor." Applause rose like a tide. I walked slowly onto the stage, heels steady on polished wood, gaze fixed on the light just above the crowd. I didn't search for her, but I felt her. Somewhere in the audience, in a corner seat, small and silent for once. I took a breath. "When I was young," I began, "I learned that silence was safer than truth, that if I shrank myself, I might be loved more. That invisibility was the price for peace." A hush fell. I grew up in a home where love had conditions, where being good meant being quiet, where ambition in the wrong body was seen as betrayal, where my worth was always measured against someone else's shadow. A few people nodded. Some stared. One woman wiped her cheek. "I was told I was too much, then not enough. I was told to stay small, smile, be grateful, be less." I paused, letting the words settle. But here's what they never told me, that shrinking doesn't earn safety. It only teaches you to disappear. And disappearing doesn't protect you. It erases you. A wave of murmurs followed, soft and rising. So I stopped disappearing. I spoke for 20 minutes. I never said her name. I never mentioned my brother, or the wedding, or the email, or the headlines. But everyone knew, and somewhere in row 43, she knew. When I finished, the standing ovation began before I even stepped away. It wasn't just applause. It was release, recognition, redemption. I didn't look toward her seat. I didn't need to. Later, after the cameras and interviews and handshakes, I returned to my dressing room. A single envelope sat on the vanity, no name, no handwriting. I opened it. Inside, a note in familiar script. "You were never just anything. I see that now. I'm sorry I made you wait so long to hear it." There was no signature. I closed the envelope, tucked it into my coat pocket, and didn't respond. That night, I walked through New York's quiet streets alone, the city buzzing at the edges. I felt taller, not in height, but in gravity, as if everything that once pulled me down now gave me weight in a different way. Not heavy, but solid. Weeks passed. Invitations flooded in, magazine covers, features, panels. Then the nomination came, Women of the Year. My assistant read it to me over coffee. "Do you want to accept?" I shook my head. "You sure?" "I'm not here to win awards," I said. "I'm here to build ladders." And so I left the lights behind. I bought a small house by the sea. It had a porch that caught morning sun and wind that never stopped talking. I spent my mornings writing memoirs, essays, letters to girls I would never meet, but always somehow knew. In the afternoons I mentored. Young women came from all over, some quiet, some angry, some broken in ways that mirrored my own. We talked, we rebuilt, we turned pain into plans. One afternoon, as I sat on a bench near the dunes, a little girl no older than 8 approached. Her hair wild in the breeze, freckles dotting her cheeks. She looked at me curiously. "Are you famous?" I smiled. "Not really. But my mum said you helped people." "I try," I said. She looked at the ocean, then back at me. "What do you do?" I paused, then said, "I used to be a secretary." Her eyes lit up. "Like the one at my school? She's really nice." "She probably is," I replied. "Do you miss it?" "No," I said, "but I'm proud of it because it taught me everything I needed to know." "Like what?" I leaned closer. "Like how to listen before I speak, how to notice what people overlook, how to do 1,000 things quietly and never ask for applause." She nodded seriously, as if committing it to memory. Then she ran off, kicking up sand. I watched her go, the wind catching her laughter. Behind me, the screen door creaked open. Mia stepped out, a cup of tea in each hand. "You're still out here?" "Best part of the day," I said, taking one. She sat beside me. "You know," she said, they're still talking about your summit speech." "They can talk," I said. "I'm done talking." She smiled. "You sure?" "Not forever, just for now." We watched the tide roll in, each wave undoing what came before. Not erasing, just rewriting. It didn't happen overnight, the unraveling. It began with distance. Not physical, but emotional. At family gatherings, those few that remained, people spoke more quietly around my mother. Not out of fear or respect, but caution. As if unsure which version of her they might meet that day. Then came the stories. A cousin, one I barely knew, pulled me aside at a memorial for a distant aunt. "I read your piece," she said softly. "I thought I was the only one she ever did that to." Then an uncle. "Your father never stood up to her, you know. We all saw it. We just kept quiet." And one by one the facade cracked. The image of our family, perfect and poised, shattered under the weight of truth. It wasn't revenge, not really. It was revelation. Without a scapegoat to absorb her bitterness, My mother grew quiet, withdrawn. Her voice lost its edge, her posture, its steel. And, with every truth that surfaced, her power faded. Not because I took it from her, but because it had always been borrowed from other people's silence. And then the final twist, so quiet it almost passed unnoticed, a call from a cousin. She's seeing someone, a therapist. I said nothing. She's been diagnosed. Narcissistic personality disorder. They said it's been going on for decades. I waited for a feeling, satisfaction, triumph, pity, but none came, just stillness. She asks about you, they added. Wants to know if you'll visit. I didn't. Not out of cruelty, out of peace. Some things once healed shouldn't be reopened. Instead, I poured myself into the work. The network Mia and I built now stretched across continents. We held retreats, we trained counsellors, we created safe spaces where none had existed before. And the letters kept coming, printed, handwritten, typed, scribbled in messy cursive. Thank you. You saved me. Because of you I found my voice. Because of you I walked away. Because of you I stayed. Because of you I'm still here. One afternoon I sat on the back porch overlooking the ocean. The breeze was warm, the kind that carried salt and memory. I held a letter in my hand, no return address. The handwriting was shaky, like a child's. I opened it. Dear Jane, I'm 14. I don't want to be here anymore. My mum tells me I ruin everything. My dad left, and she says it's my fault. I was going to disappear. I even wrote a note. Then I saw your video. You said you used to believe the same things, that it was your fault, that you didn't belong, but you were wrong. So maybe I'm wrong too. Maybe I should stay. Just one more day. Thank you. Love, Jay. I sat with the letter for a long time. Then I walked inside, opened my laptop, and pulled up the final chapter of my manuscript. The cursor blinked at the end of a blank line. I typed, "Justice isn't loud. Sometimes it whispers through survival." I hit save. The book would go to print in 2 weeks. My agent said it would likely be a bestseller. That didn't matter. What mattered was the weight lifting from my chest as the final sentence landed like a closing breath. That evening, Mia stopped by. "You look like you finished something," she said, handing me a mug of tea. I did. She sat beside me. We watched the sky turn from gold to deep blue, stars peeking out one by one like shy truths. "You ever think about her?" she asked. "Sometimes," I admitted, "but not with anger." "Regret?" "No," I said, "just distance, like looking at something behind glass." "Do you think she ever changed?" "I think she started to," I said. "But change isn't the point." "What is?" "Freedom," I answered. "The kind that comes when you no longer need the apology." We sat in silence. And then from inside the house, the phone rang. I didn't move to answer it. Whoever it was could wait. Instead, I leaned back, eyes closed, feeling the wind against my skin, alive, unbroken, whole,